Ute here of Trans Widow Ute Hagen YouTube channel and of WordPress blog, utehagengrasswidow.wordpress.com. These are all Jowie Winnie variety dahlias. This is sort of my favorite stage for them, but we even have some little buds. And what happened was a big rainstorm last night, and this whole part of the plant got knocked down. I don't know if I can get it in the frame here. Ooh, and I have a vine-ripened tomato. Oh, the tomatoes are coming into bloom. And, oh yes, and I wanted to show you these little sweet pea pods. Now, this is a garden flower sweet pea, not peas that you can eat, because the garden flower sweet peas are actually not safe to eat. But they grow beautiful flowers, and they're coming up to the top of my obelisk and in places where I have them climbing up on the fence. So this is a little bit of a ramble. I'm going to call this part of the Hagen lexicon, playlist. And I was reading an article by Steve Salerno, who teaches at University of Nevada, Las Vegas, and is also a writer about various nonfiction topics. And his article that I'm going to be quoting from is in Colin Wright's blog, Reality's Last Stand. Colin Wright being the evolutionary biologist who kind of got canceled because he said that human beings are mammals and we have two sexes. And that is how we evolved through sexual reproduction with all of our various characteristics and so on, like that. Now, I guess what I want to introduce this with is the fact that the American Academy of Pediatrics, which is equivalent to the American Medical Association, they have finally agreed, based on their members' repeated requests, to conduct or initiate an independent review of the literature that purportedly supports the idea that is termed affirmative care for children who have what in the Hagen lexicon is cross-sex ideation. Oh yes, I'm just going to mention, you might have noticed that I wasn't doing videos in the last few days. I had a mosquito bite. It's still looking a little bit funny, but I had a mosquito bite right under my eye when I had been working kind of out on a rainy day doing some transplanting, and it kind of swelled up, and I got this what I call Picasso face with both eyes almost on the same side of my face or something. So, but I'm back, and I'm almost back. I can almost see out of my right eye. So so some of the phrases that were from the Salerno article are professionally sanctioned ego trip. That is actually what affirmative therapy is. And I know very well, being the trans widow, the ex-wife of a man who went on this professionally sanctioned ego trip to decide that he is me, the mother of our children. And he adopted a lot of my gestures. He imitated my voice. He started wearing the makeup in my color, in my, peachy kind of tones. What else did he do? He really imitated me. And we ex-wives of guys like this find that is pretty frequent. So this is this is where the therapists are engaging in untruths, also known as fallacies. Yes, so sanctioned narcissism. And then there's the issue of counter-transference. And I think this is really interesting because I feel that the famous Dr. Ray Blanchard, who many years ago, 35 years ago or something, set up the so-called Blanchard protocols of cross-dressing and appearing in your opposite sex persona for 2 years before you get to go with your letters to a surgeon and lop off healthy body parts. Uh, there was this 2 year Blanchard protocol, which actually, way back in the early 1990s, Neddy did not go by those rules because he detransitioned for a period of maybe 6 months in the middle of that. And he did not appear in his female persona to our children. We had already separated, and when they went to visit him at his apartment, he just wore sort of neutral clothes, like a t-shirt and jeans, and he was wearing his hair long, but so do lots of guys, and they were still calling him daddy. So he wasn't really exploring the full ramifications of this kind of a change of persona. Uh, and I just want to point that out because now everything has been kind of collapsed into, 10 minutes and here's your surgeon. Let's wheel you into the OR. And so the countertransference issues are that I've heard Blanchard, for example, saying that no one can understand how someone who has what I call cross-sex ideation, how they can feel, how terrible it is. It's just unlike anything else in the world. And I think this is really, really wrong of him. I hope someone can tag him on Twitter, where I'm banned, or X now it's called, and let him know that I'm talking about him, and let him know that I still maintain that he and the other three musketeers of sex, James Cantor, J. Michael Bailey, and Kenneth Zucker, certainly should have been doing independent and separate work with the families to understand, what the real ramifications are. And as a matter of fact, there are so many cases where these people did like Neddy, these dudes did like Neddy, where they were only cross-dressing part of the time. And they were kind of going back and forth, and that starts to make it look more like split personality or other, almost close to schizophrenia or something like that, as opposed to this patient-dictated term, gender dysphoria. It used to be called transsexualism. And there are these psychologists, even Oz Hakim, it says that he likes the typology of Blanchard because there are like 12 different kinds of cross-dressers. And the truth is, this is not helping the person. This is making everyone around the person accommodate their ideation or fantasy. So what I'm saying is, even Dr. Blanchard saying that no one can understand the pain of a person with this ideation, just that he's saying that, and he's not able to identify what are the symptoms of stress that this person is feeling. Is this person getting an upset stomach? Is this person having heart palpitations? Is this person having... Basically, it sounds like, I know because I have PTSD because of all of this that I went through. I know that there are ways. You can look on the U.S. Veterans YouTube channel for ways to deal with the physical symptoms of PTSD. And I think that these sexologists who really made up their own field and their own protocols and their own dichotomies and nomenclatures and all this, these sexologists, really just kind of pulled the wool over everyone else's eyes, pretended that you are not causing extreme stress to the children, the trans orphans, and they minimized actually the role of the mothers of the children and who are also the wives slash ex-wives. And they deny, they absolutely are not at all recognizing the stress that they have put us under. And I'm just hoping that when Behind the Looking Glass comes out, this is Vaishnavi Sundar's documentary profiling 18 of us trans widows, and it's she is working furiously on it, and I'm relatively certain that it will come out within the next few months. And please do go to Lime Soda Films YouTube channel and watch the 2 trailers and also the wonderful other material that she has up there, especially the 4-part series that's based on her own experience. It is titled Dysphoric, and she had experienced sexual abuse, and her fantasies of not wanting to be female had to do with those experiences. And when you scratch the surface of a bunch of these people, Shapeshifter, Blair White, Neddy, they experienced abuse in childhood. I pose, just in my own little world, that Neddy probably would better be diagnosed as a gay man or maybe a bisexual man. I believe that he did have sexual peccadillos with men. I don't have proof. I just had various little indications, and there were a couple of acquaintances of mine who happened to be gay men who kind of sidled up to me and whispered into my ear or told me one way or another, I think your husband is gay. And so I wonder if in, 1979 Milwaukee, if they knew that he was actually engaging in homosexual sexual behavior because they saw him someplace or something like that. I don't know, but there were little indications that that was going on. And now we know that so many who detransition decide that the whole idea of being the opposite sex was wrong, and it had to do with their difficulties comprehending that they might just simply be same-sex attracted. I think it also fits into the fact that it just plays along with those 2 sworn affidavits that were submitted during our divorce and custody case, during which the diagnosing psychologist, Dr. Connie, and Neddy, in separate affidavits, attested that it was my fault that he decided to go get the surgeries because they somehow implied what you were supposed to read between the lines is if I was willing to stay in the marriage and be the gatekeeper and say, okay, you can go do this and have visitation with your female persona every other weekend, and I will sanction that. And I will pretend that you don't have another set of clothes that's imitating my clothes in a special place in our apartment that the children are not supposed to see somewhere. Now I'm supposed to participate in this charade, in your part-time charade. And typically what happens is the wife gets coerced into this closet behind the closet, I call it, and then he decides to come out. Oh, by the way, I just saw Eastern tiger swallowtail, a rather large one out there. That's what's distracting me. I think it's number 16 for the summer. Okay, so yes, there's this whole thing about what used to be called assertiveness training, and that kind of was a fad in the 1990s. And there's this quote here in the Salerno article. Therapist Robert Enright writes of a client whose broadsides against his wife's intolerable behavior had been reinforced by other therapists, before Enright decided that the patient sought justification for his own boorish treatment of his wife and wished for permission, sought permission to continue the same. Under such circumstances, individual therapy may weaken marriages. And Rebecca Fishbein observes in a blog called Bustle, critics have noted that personal relationships require a touch more compassion than some of these therapeutic blueprints. Here, within the industry, critics recognize the risk of affirming self-serving, if not delusional, narratives that patients spin in projecting responsibility for their problems. And I know that Neddy did project a lot of responsibility on me. I was supposed to be this malleable wife who agrees to put up with some version of this cross-dressing because he has to do it, instead of recognizing that it is an addiction and it is a most likely sexual fetish. And what's happening now, in my opinion, is that these middle-aged men, like the Neddys of the world, the trans widows' ex-husbands, are pushing this whole idea of trans kids on society because that affirms them. It justifies these damaging, these decisions that they made to mutilate their bodies and to damage the rest of society, cause their children all kinds of stress and trauma for their narcissistic needs. So here's more, and this article is not specifically about the flaws in the so-called affirmative care of cross-sex ideating individuals, but it has to do with affirming of lots of selfishness that people come to get validated with therapists. So I think this is a really interesting self-examination. Affirming the cause of these feelings, such as, I feel mad because people do not always do what I want. And that basically was a different kind of bland or generic version of the way Neddy acted about my normal responses to what he was doing. This affirming the cause of these feelings may reinforce false beliefs in the patient and therefore perpetuate a continuation of unhealthy behaviors. So what I'm going to end with here is, because I just want to do a series on the Hagen lexicon, and especially the word, the phrase of the day is, I have it somewhere. Yes, is sanctioned narcissism. Narcissism that is sanctioned by the therapists, going right all the way back to Blanchard and back further to Kinsey and Alfred Kinsey and John Money, both of whom were overt narcissists as well as pedophiles who documented what they did in charts and terrible acts with children, terrible child sexual molestation. And so this area of the field of psychology, the sexologist part of this, is simply going to have to write itself, because what I notice also is that there was a parallel development of acceptance of kink, of BDSM, bondage, domination, and sadomasochism. And the kink is very, very adjacent. It's right there. The whole emphasis on having sex using fake penis and using these kind of toys and minimizing the actual danger. And I would pose that most of these kink practices are very dangerous to the female body. And that is why I try to discuss it just as plain spoken way as possible. So, a mumbled or I see or the subtlest of nods on the part of the therapist may lead a patient who is recounting dubious behavior to think that he's getting affirmed. And I can really see this. I can really see this. And I think especially with male patients. That's just how I see it. So I have to go pick some more ripe tomatoes. One day I'll just take a bite out of one like an apple.